Hello, everyone, and welcome. It's yet another FPC NFL Sunday on a Thursday. That's right. It is week 9 in the NFL, and we are getting ready. We, meaning Braden and I, are getting ready to preview the Colts and the Jets set to kick off here tonight in Indianapolis. The Jets sitting at 2-5, coming off a fairly big and surprising win. Well, any to win, it's fairly surprising. So, and the Colts, of course, at 3-5 with perhaps new opportunity ahead of them in the division. So before we get into all that, though, there are a couple other NFL storylines that we want to touch on. First and foremost, it's the developing and really just a terrible story involving Henry Ruggs, the now former Las Vegas Raiders wide receiver. Obviously, we learned just the other day that he was involved in a deadly car crash in Las Vegas, and the more details that we learn, Braden, it makes the whole situation worse and worse. He was driving at an incredibly high speed, 156 miles an hour, just moments before the accident, and his blood alcohol level was twice the legal limit. So there's a lot of things that go into this, the least of which is what's going to happen on the football field for the Raiders, because, of course, he is now a former Las Vegas Raider, and probably and likely will not be playing in the NFL, perhaps ever again. And that's probably what he deserves, in my opinion. So,
yeah, it's crazy how quickly things can change, I guess, on one simple decision, and I guess not thinking, for other people in that situation, and it was one thing to just see, not just the speed, obviously, that he was traveling at, but everything else, like you said, I think the blood alcohol level was twice the legal limit, and also had a legal weapon in the vehicle. So it's just one of those things that just keeps piling on, and it's one of those things that just creates more issues for more than one one person, excuse me. So just not thinking ahead and kind of leading to more and more issues afterward. It's really sad. It's really unfortunate.
yeah, and sad, and of course, I mean, the biggest thing here is that someone lost their life over that, and this is, these are the issues that you have when you make the decision, and it is a decision to drive after being as intoxicated as he apparently was. So, unfortunately, it's a story that we're going to keep watching and seeing it develop as it goes about. But just definitely a sad situation in so many different meanings of the word. Next, though, unfortunately, obviously, we all know that you cover the Chiefs. If people can't read, it's right up there on the screen if you're watching. And this Sunday was supposed to be, just like it was before, supposed to be the meeting of Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers. Well, just like it happened in 2019, it will actually not come to fruition, as Aaron Rodgers is out for at least the next 10 days because guess what? He tested positive for COVID. And as it turns out, despite some of his implications and inferences, he is not vaccinated. And this is actually causing a bit of a stir because of his actions leading into this, and his actions while, you know, walking around pretending like he was vaccinated, or lying to the media, whatever it is. It's not a great situation for Green Bay. At the very least, he will miss this Sunday, of course. Maybe the following week, who knows? It depends on how his testing goes. But beyond that, Braden, there's a legitimate reason and cause to suspend Aaron Rodgers. And I talked about it a little bit this morning on FPC Radio Live with John Sapichetti. And, he's one of the biggest Aaron Rodgers guys that I know, and certainly one of the biggest supporters of Aaron Rodgers out there in general. And he agrees and would certainly support a suspension because based on every action that was apparently taken by him, it kind of really spits in the face of the quote unquote integrity of the shield. And of course, the risk that he put on folks that assumed he was vaccinated. So do you agree that if a suspension is handed down, well, first of all, do you think a suspension should be given? Well, I guess, yeah, that's the question, apparently.
Yeah, I think so. Just because I think just from non-football perspective, I think everyone's just wanting this pandemic to either obviously end as quickly as possible, and I think just from that standpoint, kind of what he chose to kind of put out there, I think that obviously put, like you said, many people in a difficult position, and then I think from an NFL and football standpoint, it kind of just it's a really weird situation when you put his holdout into the equation as well. Just kind of from the Packers' perspective, I think this is something that really could drive a big wedge between him and the team, and it's going to be interesting to see how kind of the teammates react around him, and of course the front office and that kind of feud there if it gets even stickier than it already is. So that's kind of I definitely think a suspension is probably going to be, I guess, very likely is how I would put it, just because of all the things that they have listed that unvaccinated players, if you violate the rules in the facility, it's a pretty lengthy list and pretty hefty. So I would not be surprised to see a suspension.
Yeah, and then of course, I mean, the fact that a lot of these actions are on video and on camera, so there's really no gray area in a lot of this. So
Right.
and kind of what you kind of got mentioned a little bit there is how are his teammates going to react? How whether it's directly related to this or something that John brought up this morning. What happens if the next time that Aaron Rodgers decides that he's going to lecture a teammate about a play or whatever? Is that teammate all of a sudden are they going to look at him just a little bit differently? And it doesn't seem like much, but especially in an NFL locker room and especially when it involves the quarterback, it can mean a whole hell of a lot. And certainly you add in the extra factor of, I believe that, this was going to be his last season in Green Bay
Right.
regardless. I think I think the organization expect. So you have that also kind of hovering over the whole situation. This isn't a guy that's 29 years old with a lengthy contract. This is a guy who, by all accounts, seems like he's on his way out from Green Bay. So it just further complicates and muddies the whole situation. So, and again, much like the previous thing we talked about, this is something that's going to be in the headlines for quite some time because this isn't just going to be
Right.
over in a couple days. So we're going to have to see what happens. What sort of complicity the Packers organization may or may not have had, and what kind of discipline he ultimately is going to get. Which I'm with you. I think based on just the actions and based on the uh, reasoning for various suspensions, I think it's a no brainer that the NFL does hand down something, whether it's 2 games or what. I don't really know. But
Mhm.
in the same sense, I do believe that he would deserve it because it's hard to defend some of these actions. So anyway, last big headline heading into this week after, of course, or before we get to Thursday Night Football tonight. Derrick Henry, the league's leading rusher, still currently the league's leading rusher at 940 some odd yards, is out for the season. Now, the Titans went ahead and signed Adrian Peterson, and he will likely be elevated to the regular team and kind of take over that role. But we're not talking about just any other running back. We're talking about a guy who actually would have a legitimate case to be in the MVP conversation. I still think it would be a long shot, but I also think it's the only running back you can actually make a realistic case to be the MVP. How big of a loss is this for the Titans? Because I think we all, or maybe I shouldn't speak for you, but I think we both think that Ryan Tannehill is a little underappreciated in this league. I don't think he's a guy that's gonna carry a team on his back to a Super Bowl, but I think he's a lot better than average, which I think a lot of people assume he is. Um, this defense isn't what it was the last couple seasons. It has its moments, but for the most part, it's pretty much you know middle of the pack. How big of a loss is Derrick Henry for the Titans? And is this a division altering loss, perhaps?
I think so. I think when you talk about Derrick Henry, I mean, just how many ways he can kind of affect the defense, not just with him, but you talk about how much Tannehill wins with play action and kind of setting that up. And I think just opening up the offense more and more. And Him probably allowing the Titans to see heavier boxes from defenses, that's something that's probably going to change significantly. So I think there's going to be a lot of difference here on how defenses are gonna play Tennessee. Are we going to see them maybe pressure Tannehill a little more, force him to use his legs a little more often? So I think that is a definitely a division altering loss. I guess that if there is a positive for Tennessee, sounds like he could be back by the end of the regular season. But like you said, with this defense, I think the margin for error becomes much more slim now without Derrick Henry. So I do think Adrian Peterson, honestly, stylistically, is a pretty good fit for their offense, but he is still a 36-year-old guy that hasn't played at all this season. So I don't know how much to really expect from him stepping into that role right away.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I mean, when it comes to the ability to replace Derrick Henry, at least you have a guy that you don't really have to change play calls for. I mean, he's going to do a lot of the same type of runs that Derrick Henry. Now, the effectiveness, again, isn't going to be the same. Perhaps if this was Adrian Peterson of 2009, that's a little bit different. But guess what? It's 2021, and you don't get to go back in time unless your name is Tom Brady. So, so fortunately for the Titans, that is the case for them, that they're able to, offset that loss with a guy who, given a little bit of time, should be able to replicate. But like to your point, their margin of error just isn't there. And this is a nice transition into the team that they did beat last week, the Indianapolis Colts, who, they have their moments. Like, I'll be honest, look, for the most part, Carson Wentz has played better than he has the last couple of years. He isn't, as some people have been a little bit quick to jump to, he isn't the opposite of what he was before. He's still prone, as we saw obviously last week, prone for that boneheaded, just scratch your head, what are you thinking type plays, which I don't think are necessarily going away. However, at 3-5, the Titans, I believe, are what, 4-4, or is it 4 and I should have actually looked this up before. I'm very
Titans
unprepared right now.
But I think Titans are 6-2 right now.
Yeah, 6. Okay, so
let's see. Jets and Cardinals, I think, are their only two losses.
Which, again, you think about the Jets, whatever. Anyways, we'll talk about the Jets here in just a second. But so look, it's not going to be, excuse me, it's not going to be an easy path back to potentially competing for the division title. However, if it happens that Derrick Henry is as big of a loss as we both think he is, and as I think most people are portraying him as, again, I don't think anyone in their right minds will say Derrick Henry isn't the best running back in the league, pound for pound, because of just, where he's going and you still can't stop him. And I think most people would agree that he is the most MVP worthy non-quarterback. So by that logic, his absence from the Titans team should mean a huge loss. So, especially early on, maybe they stumble out of the gate here without Henry. Maybe you have, maybe you're more prepared than I am. Maybe you have some of their next few games in front of you, so I can remark on them and have a better idea. I mean, if they're playing, well, I was going to say the Jets, but if they're playing, Houston and some of these other bad teams, maybe they will win a couple games. But fortunately for the Colts, these are the moments that you want to get in the middle of the season when you have a 3-5 start, which we're going to get to here, because now they have an opportunity to beat the Jets. And, we talk about the Titans and their only loss, or one of their only two losses of the season actually came to the Jets, and the Jets have at times looked like they're one of the worst teams to ever step foot on a football field, but then they go out and surprisingly beat the Cincinnati Bengals last week. So look, I'm looking at this game and I'm saying the Colts at home, the Colts are the better team in my opinion. The Mike White story is nice and it's fun. I'm not going to count on him to continue to look like he's one of the top 5 to 7 passers in this league. I do like what Carson Wentz is doing, assuming he can limit the mistakes. I don't think he's going to ever wipe them out. So my initial impression of this game is, well, this looks like a pretty easy win for the Colts to get them a little bit closer to 500. But the Carson Wentz factor and the fact that somehow the Jets just apparently win big games like this.
Yeah, and I think the big thing for the Jets is right now they're kind of finding their groove while some of their better players are getting healthier. I think C.J. Mosley
Mhm.
had one of his bigger games in a while last week. So it's guys like that. It's guys like Jamison Crowder being back in the lineup. I think is making a big difference. And yeah, from the Colts side of things, I think Carson Wentz. The biggest thing is we haven't seen him play hero ball as much of this season for the most part. I think him being back with Frank Reich is kind of leading to a lot of that. But also, when you have the running back of Jonathan Taylor with you, I think that makes things a lot easier. So there's a lot that I think in this game, the running backs are going to be a big factor on each side because we've seen Michael Carter now have a couple of big games, and even Ty Johnson for the Jets has been a pretty good receiving back for them. So it's going to be, I think, honestly, a running back heavy game, and both quarterbacks could honestly, I think, work similarly tonight with quick passes or working to the outside flats.
Yeah, I mean, Carson Wentz can certainly take advantage of this Jets defense. If you're looking up on the screen now, that's not a typo. It's not a mistake. The Jets are giving up 29.4 points per game, which by any stretch of the imagination is a recipe for disaster. It's probably why they only have 2 wins. But then you also scratch your head and say, how the hell did they get 2 wins if they're giving up that many points a game? Now, granted, that can be skewed by giving up 54 to the Patriots, but look, if you're averaging through 7 or 8 weeks of the season, nearly 30 points a game given up, you're not a good defense. And on the flip side, when you're averaging only 16 points a game on offense, you're not a great offense. Now, if you flip those, if you were average, one was offense, one was you're looking at a pretty elite team, but unfortunately, that is not the case for the Jets. The Colts are averaging nearly 10 points a game more than the Jets right now on offense, which isn't surprising. As much as I give Carson Wentz slack, I obviously think he's a better quarterback, at least right now, than Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson isn't even on the field right now because of injury. And what we know about Mike White, well, not much. I mean, again, you can go back to talking about previous performances in college or whatever. Otherwise, I don't know what we saw. Do I think is going to sustain? I don't think so. I mean, who who can expect something like that? However, maybe there's a twist of irony here, and maybe there's a little bit of fate going in the Jets' favor in that their franchise, quote unquote, franchise quarterback Zach Wilson was knocked out of the season or out of the game by a Patriot, and the unknown Mike White comes into the game to win. And, you never know. You never know. We didn't. I don't think anyone expected Tom Brady 20 years ago. Do you get the same sort of impression with this game, though? I mean, overall, like everything just seems to favor Indianapolis in this. I just, as much as that story was nice that the Bengals lost that game, maybe it was more about the Bengals than necessarily the Jets. I don't know if the Jets can, getting healthy, yes, but I don't know if they can necessarily be much better on defense because again, it's been a pretty bad stretch of games here for the Jets here.
Yeah, and I kind of went back and looked at that Bengals game a little bit real quick, just watching the highlights. I think it was a lot of just luck kind of going their way. I mean, I don't want to say they didn't work hard against the Bengals, but there was a lot of trick plays that worked for them. There was a lot of plays where, I mean, the Bengals almost would have won if Burrow doesn't have a tipped interception at the end, and even Mike White had a couple of tipped interceptions go against him. So I think there was a lot of just it being kind of one of those days where just the bag of tricks worked more than anything. Whereas I think the Colts, I think even some of their losses, they've probably been the better team. They've just kind of beaten themselves and kind of made some fundamental errors that they hadn't made, in just a couple weeks prior. So I think that's kind of how I feel going into this one is the Jets may still work hard, but I think if you don't have those bag of tricks and luck kind of going your way again this week, it could be definitely a long night for them.
The Jets, I'm looking at their games right now. They have not let up fewer than let's see, 20, well, 19. Well, they let up 19 in week 1. They lost 19-14 to the Panthers.
Mm.
But aside from that, they haven't let up fewer than 25 points in any of these games. So, yeah, this isn't a situation where Yeah, it's at least 25. So this isn't a situation where their points per game is skewed by one bad game. This is pretty consistently giving up, essentially games that are almost impossible for teams to win. If you go through the records of some of the elite quarterbacks and their records when their teams give up 21 plus points a game, there's only one guy that has a winning record. I think you can all figure out
Wow.
who it is. I don't have to say his name. So,
Yeah.
even when you have the elite of the elite quarterbacks, it's near impossible to win games like this. So, the
Mhm.
Jets defense is just, as inept as the offense is, they have had moments where they've put up some points. Obviously, 34 points against the Bengals. Defense still put up 31. Um, against the Falcons, it's respectable. 24 points in a win over the Titans. So, or 27 rather. So there is there is hope, I guess, for this offense. And I think a lot of it resides on the development of Zach Wilson. Obviously, he's not in there right now. But to your point, the healthiness of this team is going to help them. And hopefully, or, if you're a
Mhm.
Jet fan, produce more than 16.3 points a game. So I have, before we get into our picks, not that we haven't kind of given away our picks already, I did have a few props here that I want to bring up, but I seem to have misplaced where they were. We had them kind of here, usually with the all the Thursday night football stuff. Wow, yeah, this is pretty tough. I had it all right here. Anyways, I'm gonna try to keep stalling until I find find what I'm looking for here. Any other impressions or thoughts coming into this game? Questions, concerns, storylines that you're paying attention to?
Yeah, I guess with the Jets, it'll be interesting to see maybe what wide receiver emerges, if any, besides Jamison Crowder. Corey Davis is doubtful again with the hip injury. So I know Keelan Cole almost had a terrific catch last week, and Denzel Mims is trying to capitalize on some of the opportunities he's been given. But right now, those guys are just not really showing up enough right now with that offense. So if Jamison Crowder is kind of shut down tonight, it'll be interesting to see maybe what guy Mike White kind of leans on if it isn't a running back.
Speaking of running backs, I got this actually isn't entirely directed towards this game, but certainly this game is part of the big picture. Jonathan Taylor obviously was named one of the AFC Offensive Player of the Month. Oh, here it is. I lost it again for a second. Pro Bowl for Jonathan Taylor this year. Are you taking that? Yes or no? Yes.
Yes, I think
Yeah.
so. I think there's a lot of people like voting wise. I think just kind of go with the more stat driven or popular name. So if Taylor's remains at the top of the list, I think it'll be probably a no brainer.
All right, Michael Pittman. Here's our next play pickup prop. I don't have the graphics for us, so you're just gonna have to listen to me really tight. Make sure you're paying attention here. Pittman versus the Jets. Over under 8.5 receptions tonight.
Mhm. Let's see. Yeah, I think I got to go over. He's just been really on fire. I think right now, from what I remember. So I think Wentz has really kind of found a good connection with him. So I got to go over.
All right, Michael Carter. Total yards over
Ooh.
under 180.5.
Mm, man,
Tough one.
I'm gonna go under. I think the Colts have been, I believe, one of the better teams. I know Kyle's not here, but I think I saw fantasy wise they're like second best against running backs. So applying that to I think the real game logic, I think that'll be an under for Michael Carter tonight.
All right, next, obviously, we talked about the matchup, the quarterback matchup, White versus Wentz. Who has more pass attempts? Who do you think is being trusted more or needed more to throw the ball in this game?
Probably going to go with Mike White, just because you already have. I think the running mentality of the Colts, but I think obviously if they're down big early, Mike White's probably going to be trusted again to lead another comeback. So I got to go with White.
Yeah, that kind of does seem like the the right choice there. Just because, again, we talked about Jonathan Taylor, and we know that the Colts can always obviously lean on that. So yeah, that was it. So last but not least, who do you got to win this game, Braden? Because I think by all of our discussion so far, I think we're both leaning in the right direction or in the same direction. Whether or not that's right, we'll figure that out. But who do you have winning this game?
Yeah, I got the Colts. I think with the Jets, like I said, kind of a lot of luck went their way last week. And I think being on a short week with that emotional high, it's going to be a lot to kind of come back from. Where the Colts, I think, are always never too high on themselves, so to speak. So yeah, I got the Colts tonight. I just think it'll be a Jonathan Taylor big game coming. So I can't wait to see how he does tonight.
All right. Assuming, and I have the Colts too. I have the Colts. We both agree on that. And I'm going to put you on the spot right here before we go. Assuming the Colts win this game and they move to 4-5, and we already mentioned the Titans are at 6-2. Who wins the division? Who wins the AFC South? Do you believe that the Derrick Henry loss is enough to make that prediction that the Colts can overcome this deficit? What say you, Braden? I'm gonna put you on the spot. You could either celebrate or be very wrong about this.
Man, I do think it'll be close, but honestly, I think the Colts will win the division. You look at the I did pull up the Titans' next 4 games here. They have the Rams obviously this week Sunday night.
Mhm.
Then they host the Saints in Houston, and then go to New England before their late bye week. So I honestly don't know if I see them beating anybody but Houston in the stretch. So I'm going to say the Colts find a way to do it and find a way to get back into the playoffs with Carson Wentz.
We're gonna save that clip. I'm gonna play it over and over again, especially if the Colts get back into it. Thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in. Be sure to join. First me tomorrow morning for FPC Radio Live as we talk about this game, continue to preview Week 9, and of course, join myself, Braden, Kyle, and Ricky Sunday morning at 10 a.m. for FPC NFL Sunday, where we recap this game a little bit, and then of course preview the rest of Sunday's action. So enjoy tonight. Have a great Thursday. Be safe, and we'll talk to you then.